So the premise of this talk is really kind of driven by what's happening in the world right now. Like, it is a crazy, crazy time. But I think it's important to give you guys a little bit of context about my background, which really frames how I've arrived at where I am now. So I grew up in a small town in western Missouri. Missouri is actually how we say it there. Now, it's not as small as you see in the picture. We have a Walmart there. But I'm the second of 7 children in a Mormon family, and this town is mostly white and evangelical. So I guess it took me a long time to feel like I fit in. But ultimately, I developed a massive amount of great friends. One of them was not a fictional character. But needless to say, I was a pretty extremely late bloomer. So if you don't know about being raised Mormon, my mother raised me and my 5 sisters to be wives and mothers, and kind of that was the future destined for us. My mom, I think, never planned that I would have a wife who is a mother. She wasn't totally ready for that. But basically, as I came up in my adolescence as a closeted gay kid, because as you think about the time then, when Ellen came out, it destroyed her career, so there were really no figures in pop culture or that were out. And so, and especially even now in the town I grew up in, it's not really okay to be gay. But once I got to high school, there was a really big transformation for me socially. And I would love to say it's because I was the quarterback of the high school football team, and I made the game-winning pass, and was also the head of the cheerleading squad, and that's why I didn't need to date anyone in high school. And but what actually happened was that AOL chat rooms came out. And that was a really powerful inflection point, both in technology and for me personally, because I realized there were other weird kids in small towns that like math and science, and that were just like me. So I was able to really connect. But people have really, and it created this opportunity for people to dive in to whatever social identities they are into. And that's a really, really awesome component and feature of what the internet brought us. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's also allowed people to dive in to hate groups and misogyny and human trafficking and all kinds of things. So the pendulum swings very, very far in both ways on this issue. So I think to give you guys a good example, I'm going to show you a really, really outrageous image, and then we can talk about kind of both ends of the spectrum. Okay, so this picture is of an illegal, gay, interracial wedding. Like, that is fucking outrageous to some people. On the other end of the spectrum, it took more than a decade for my family to recover from the fallout with my parents when I came out. There are people that protest and riot and murder, and suicide is the leading cause of death among gay teenagers, and that is also outrageous. And so there is this, like I said, the pendulum swing of outrage in both ends, and people are really, really diving in to what they believe. But there are people who absolutely would, to this day, protest my wedding. I got married in blue cowboy boots, by the way, if you're wondering. Those are my dress-up shoes. So professionally, I founded a company called Print Syndicate 5 years ago, and the real focus was thinking about social identities that were unserved when it comes to product. So introverts, one of our best sellers early on is Introverts Unite. We're here, we're uncomfortable, and we want to go home. And now most people be like, you can't sell t-shirts to introverts, but really you think about it, it's like half the population. There's a lot of us closeted introverts out there. And we focused on alien believers and feminists, and we really dove in with a filter on our values, on the message that we wanted to send as a company. And it was a really, really powerful, and continues to be a powerful opportunity to connect with consumers that believe the same way we do. So this image is actually one of the proudest moments of my professional career or my life. I cried when I saw this. So this is Ruth Bader Ginsburg being presented with one of our shirts. Says, "You want the Ruth, you can't handle the Ruth." But we also created the notorious RBG t-shirt, which is now pop culture, which I think helped drive Ruth Bader Ginsburg to become a pop culture icon. But, you know, the reality of building a business is that it's a powerful lever for impact in 3 ways. The first way is just the function of the business in the first place. So we paid responsible wages, we gave time off to our hourly employees, we believe in equal pay, which in this case means we paid all the men in our company 77 cents on the dollar, because it's legal. It's totally legal. And gave affordable benefits so that as a company, we were not perpetuating the cycle of poverty. The second way is that as a brand, we have an extremely powerful voice and platform to speak out on social and cultural and political issues. And we absolutely use that platform. So we dove into the fray during the election. We dove in, so one of our best sellers in the feminist category is, "If he puts his hands on you, cut them off." Now, a lot of brands really shy away from that kind of overt statement relative to domestic violence, which seems to me completely crazy that you'd be like, "Ooh, well, we don't want to upset people that think domestic violence is okay." Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. And yet, very few brands really jump in. And then the third component was that our products themselves allowed our customers to express themselves in unique ways and use those to literally put objects on their bodies and move through the world to communicate specific things. So about 6 months ago, I joined a company called BrewDog. So BrewDog, we got some craft beer drinkers out there. So BrewDog is the largest craft brewer in Europe, founded in Scotland, and has just started operations here in the US. So I am I'm the CEO of BrewDog USA, and my job is to grow this into a national brand in the US. And people ask me, like, how did you get to a brewery, and why are you doing that? That's like an industry dominated by straight white dudes with beards versus the tech industry, which is straight white dudes with hoodies. So I was like, well, it's like 75% the same. But the real core of the reason for joining BrewDog was, one, the opportunity to join a phenomenal company and take a big swing at an empire. But the real piece and the deal breaker for me, or deal maker, was that BrewDog has been, since its inception 10 years ago, absolutely overt in diving in to commenting and protesting on political and social issues. And so I say that the founders and I are spiritually aligned because I have not had to recalibrate anything that I say or do whatsoever for this new role. And that was the one thing that in the 10 interviews I had, I pushed really, really hard on, which is that I'm going to say what I think and say what I want, and this brand has to be a lever for impact. And if they didn't believe that, I wouldn't have taken that job, but they absolutely, and we BrewDog absolutely do. So these are our two founders. And this is one of my favorite protest beers they've ever done. It's phenomenal. So if you recall, during the Sochi Olympics, Putin banned gay athletes and gay propaganda. And so James and Martin created a beer called Hello, My Name is Vladimir. And I'm going to actually read the description to you because it's just, this is when I knew that these are my guys. Hello, my name is Vladimir. I am a beer for uber hetero men who ride horses while topless and carrying knives. I'm a beer to mark the 2014 Winter Olympics, but I am not for gays. Love wrestling burly men on the judo mat or fishing in your Speedos? Then this is the beer for you. And the hashtag not for gays was trending because then it's not gay propaganda, it's like uber straight propaganda. So they were really going for that, and they donated all the proceeds from this protest beer to global organizations focusing on persecuted populations. So James and Martin are banned from Russia. So a recent announcement that we made a couple months ago is that we will be building a bar on the Texas-Mexico border. So we think make beer, not walls is a better theme than building walls. And one of the interesting interview questions I got was like, well, aren't you afraid of alienating people? And I thought, we're totally comfortable alienating xenophobes. Totally fine with that. And racists, sure. Yeah, we'll alienate them too. But a lot of companies really, again, shy away from making these kinds of hyper-overt commentaries on what I see is the difference between like right things and wrong things and not necessarily political. So there's some also great examples of what not to do, and I think you guys will probably recognize this one. So this is the Pepsi commercial where I think sometimes companies are like, we should really jump into the fray here. Like, it's important that we say something. But unless it is, I think, in the DNA of both the leadership team and the brand, it can come across as completely contrived and then outrage people. So this is, I think, is to try to diagnose like why this was a disaster, is because like people are getting beaten and pepper sprayed and sometimes killed in protests. And so, I think that the way that people spin it or try to leverage those things, unless it is authentic and there's a real message behind it, consumers are really, really savvy these days and see through the bullshit. But, a lot of people talk about, oh, we don't want our business to get involved in politics. We don't want to endorse or not endorse a party or a candidate. We don't want to alienate half the population. But, at this point in the world, from my perspective, we are beyond a political space on some of these issues. So, is white supremacy or racism or misogyny a political issue? Is inequality or poverty or the lack of education in our public schools like a political issue that your company or you personally don't want to get involved in? To me, those are not political issues. Those are social issues and much, much deeper than, one side or the other. So, the title of this talk is We Don't Want Nazis to Buy Our Beer. And we don't. We really don't. So we'll start with that. We don't want Nazis. But what's funny is one of my friends said, well, T, do you think, do you need to ask your bosses if you can use that as a talk title at a conference? And I was like, no. I mean, if I had to, I'd be done, right? So I'm like, well, no. And I guess, but it was an interesting thing to think about, right? So in your work, could you say, we don't want Nazis to buy our fill in the blank, and that might be a contentious issue in your workplace? I think possibly I could think of some companies where people would be like, ooh, well, we don't. But I think universally, everyone's supposed to hate the Nazis. But let's unpack this a little bit more. Okay, we don't want the Nazis to buy our beer. We don't want white supremacists to buy our beer. We don't want the KKK to buy our beer, or racists, or homophobes, or misogynists, or climate change deniers, or pussy grabbers to buy our beer. And I don't think that's controversial. And if you have a boss that thinks that's controversial, you may want to reflect on what company you work for. Because I think it's really, really, really important to think about as an individual with your own values and as a company with values, what message are you really putting out into the world? And are you really worried about offending Nazis and pussy grabbers? Really? What business are you in? So I think, as I really reflect for myself, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff, is it possible that you're going to lose customers because you've alienated the Nazis? Maybe. Is it possible that if you speak out against misogyny or inequality or poverty or racism or climate change that you lose customers? It's totally possible. It'll probably happen. But I think that my contention and argument here is that if you do, the people left standing will fucking love you for it. All right, that's all I got, guys. Thank you.